And good morning or good evening, everyone. If you can hear me, please write something in the comments so that I know I can hear you live and that you're with me. Hello, my name is Gabe Mercado, and I'm with Third World Improv in the Philippines. And it's 10 a.m. in the morning right here. And today is the inaugural episode of Eye to Eye. And Eye to Eye is a live stream that I'll be doing every month right here on Facebook. And it's just conversations about improvisation. Now, if you've never heard of improvisation before, well, it's the practice of making things up on the spot. And perhaps the most widely used example of improvisation is when we see it on stage or on television, where people do shows without a script and completely unplanned. Well, Eye to Eye is all about conversations on all kinds of improvisation. And this is brought to you by Third World Improv. Yes, that's our school over here in the Philippines. Today, I'm really excited to have a good friend as my very first guest in the Eye to Eye podcast. Ted is an applied improviser, and Ted also is a trainer, and his particular specialty is mindfulness and spirituality. And today we're going to be talking about the spirituality of improvisation. So I'm very glad to have my friend Ted DesMaisons up on screen. Ted,
Hello, Gabe. Hello, everybody. Great to see you.
great to see you and great to have you here on the live stream. Ted, how have you been doing the past year over this pandemic year?
Hanging in there. I feel very fortunate. I've been healthy and good people around me and good places to be. I live close to the beach, so I get to go on lovely walks. And, it's been a trial like for everybody, but hanging in there, staying healthy and hoping that things open back up again soon for all of us.
Now, Ted actually, for everyone else, Ted actually lives in a place that will be familiar to many Filipinos. Ted lives
Yes, yes,
in
yes. Daly City,
Daly.
California. Apparently, at one point, Daly City had the highest percentage of Filipinos in any city other than Manila, or like any
Yeah,
any city outside of Manila. Outside the country of the Philippines, but I don't know if that's true. But I've heard legend of that.
I've been to Daly City, and it really felt like Manila in the like in the 80s,
Hmm.
with some of the people we were seeing there. How have you been taking care of yourself in the pandemic, Ted?
Well, I've done a lot of beach walks and done some photography out there. I've spent a lot of time with my partner Wendy, and she and I have been good supports for each other. Um, I I was really fortunate to be able to transition my teaching online, and I tell you what, that's felt like a godsend. And before the pandemic, I didn't do any teaching online. I taught all in person, and then I had to switch to online, and then it opened up all this new possibility. And so I've actually had students from South Africa and Europe and South America and Asia. And so it's been really neat to open that up. Um, but I love to teach, and so getting to teach has really kept me sane during this time.
Now, to give a background of what you do, what exactly do you teach, Ted?
Well, so I used to teach religious studies and philosophy at a private boarding school.
Right.
So I've always been interested in questions of meaning and purpose, and like why are we here, and what's all this crazy stuff about. And I left that almost 7 years ago now
Okay.
to focus on the combination of mindfulness and improvisation. I was really fascinated by that the pairing, because they both elevate each other. So oftentimes improv is kind of like, hey ho whoa whoa whoa, and mindfulness can give it
It's
this
all
kind
over
of,
the place. Yeah.
yeah, can give it a grounding. And sometimes mindfulness is like very serious. Now we have to do this very serious practice, and so improv gives it a chance to have a little bit of bounce and a little bit of connectivity. and it's really fun to get to blend the two and see where are they partners and where do they rub each other and like create a little bit of tension. And so that's been my focus these last 6 years now. And so I've been teaching at Stanford Continuing Studies. It's through Stanford University, and I've done playful mindfulness classes and personal presence classes and vocal training. And I taught a course recently called "Wait, you mean I don't have to suffer? A personal and playful intro to the teachings of the Buddha." So, we're sort of like trying to mix in things. We'll pull whatever, we can pull it all in. But yeah, they're mostly about being present in the moment.
Your particular mix of mindfulness, spirituality, improvisation, that's rare in the improv scene. And that's why
Mm,
you were the first name that I thought of when I thought that it would be a great conversation on the intersection of improvisation and spirituality as my kickoff
mhm,
episode, because today
mm,
happens to be in the Philippines, the start of Holy Week. And
mhm,
although the observance of it isn't as big as it used to be, it's a time when people really slow down and
mhm,
reflect, no matter their belief,
mhm,
at least here in the Philippines.
mhm.
When it comes to this side of you, the spirituality side, the wondering why we're here and all of that, when did that first start for you?
That's a tough question. I mean, I feel like I've always had it.
Yeah,
My mom was really into spirituality, and my parents met at the Catholic club at Tufts University in Boston, outside of Boston. So it was kind of in the air that I was breathing as a kid. And then
right.
when I went to first grade, my first year of school, I went to Catholic school for 4 years, I guess. So I wasn't big on I wasn't so big on the Catholic tradition, on
Right.
the dogma, but I really liked the ritual of it, and I really liked the ceremony of it, and the meaning, and the deeper searches. And in school, we got a lot of the great questions, so I really liked great questions, and that's what led me to it. But then in high school, I got really into Native American teachings and
Nice.
Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism, and like learning from all these other avenues. Um, my mom was really into astrology and all sorts of other kind of new age stuff. So I just read all of it and took it in, and it just kind of kept going.
You actually studied ritual.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, what was that like? Yeah.
So for me, I like looking for the threads between all these different traditions, and what are the threads that make sense for us as human beings. And uh, so in Catholicism, I liked the candles and the prayers and the people sharing. They're like, wow, people have been saying the same thing for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? It's like, how cool is that we're saying the same thing? Um, so it's like, what are the things that string us together and give us a sense of meaning and purpose? And uh, it doesn't have to be attached to a particular religion. So,
Right. Right.
for me, I live right by the ocean. Like, to go watch the sunset, I know there are people around the world doing the same thing every day with that sense of wonder and awe. And that could be a ritual, or it could be saying grace before a meal, or kissing your partner before you go to sleep at night, or whatever the thing is. And as Missy's saying, if it's meaningful, if we give it meaning, if we choose it to bind us together or to bind us to life itself. So.
Yeah. When my particular journey was that I was actually I grew up in a Catholic family, and I went to a Jesuit
Hmm.
university. And
Hmm.
while in the Jesuit university, I actually considered entering the Jesuit pre-novitiate, and I was actually one
Wow.
exam away from entering the Jesuit pre-novitiate. And at that time, what was in vogue at that time was the in Jesuit circles, in Ignatian circles, was the practice of Anthony de Mello, who was an
Hmm.
Indian Jesuit, who
Hmm.
combined meditation and Eastern practices and integrated
Hmm.
them into the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius. And that
Nice.
hooked me. And that hooked
Hmm.
me. And there were practices like the Buddha walk, where it would
Hmm.
just be mindful, a Buddhist walk, the mindful walking. And then
Hmm.
there would be mantras that we could do for just about everything from
Right.
walking to even pooping or peeing. And it was a Jesuit teaching us these mantras. And
Yes.
I was
Yes.
completely blown away how even things that were considered unspeakable, we could actually bring up to mindfulness and
Hmm.
prayer.
Hmm.
And years later, when I did my very, very first improv workshop, I actually did an intensive with Paul Sills over in Door County in Wisconsin. And the very first exercise we
Hmm.
did was Viola's Poland's spacewalk. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was just completely floored that the spacewalk was basically the Buddhist walk,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
mindfulness of how you're walking, how you're moving, and all
Hmm.
of that. And for me, it became so obvious from that point on that improvisation can enhance spirituality and mindfulness, and
Hmm.
mindfulness can enhance improvisation. Was there a moment like that for you when it comes to when you really saw how both work together and complement each
Hmm.
other really well?
Um, I don't know if there's a specific moment. But I love hearing that story about you. I didn't know that about you, Gabe, and it makes perfect sense because when I've seen you do improv and when I've heard you write or speak, you have that grounding and that gravitas as well as the playfulness. So that doesn't surprise me. And I wanted to say also I feel honored that this is the first episode, and now I know it's in your heart too. Uh, but so I had grown up with this kind of curiosity about spirituality, and then when my freshman year in college, freshman and sophomore years in college, I took improv. And the person who taught me, Patricia Ryan Madsen, who wrote the book
Of
Improv
course, improv
Wisdom,
wisdom.
yeah, she was one of my first teachers, and for her, improvisation is not just theater, it's not just games, it's a life wisdom. And she had had a lot of training in Japan and in Buddhist thinking, and so she brought this lens to it anyway. And then, like, I took her class, and of course, this is going to line up with my thinking. Like, so for me, it just was, of course, this is a life wisdom thing. This makes perfect sense, and that was a long time ago, but that seed was planted pretty strong and pretty obviously. It's like, of course, these go together. Of course, this makes perfect sense. So,
Yeah, Patricia, for those watching, Patricia Ryan Madsen in Improv Wisdom is one of the most important books in the improvisation canon. And um,
mhm,
Ted, you had her as a teacher. I've only been with her in Applied Improvisation Network conferences, and actually,
mhm,
we've only had at most a 2 minute conversation over
mhm.
lunch or over dinner, and so I haven't had the chance to have her as a teacher. What was that like?
Well, she's still a good friend and mentor. And well, hello. Speaking of good friends and mentors, this is Marley.
Yes.
Um,
Hi, Marley.
um, Patricia is a wonderful friend and mentor, and she lives maybe 20 minutes down the road from me now. So I actually get to see her often. I saw her last couple of weeks ago. Um, but she is somebody who lives the practice. And so when she teaches, she's got an idea of what she wants to do, but then she gets into the room and says hello to people and she improvises. And she shares a story or shares a game or shares an exercise. And then it boop, 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 unfolds. And I still rely on her. I mean, I have gone to her many times in the last several years to say, I'm trying to sort this through in my life. Can you help me think about this? And she's really great. she's really great and regularly reminds me to be generous and to be reliant on love rather than trying to constrict around things I get fearful about. And I feel blessed to have her as a friend and teacher.
Yeah, and with Patricia, you're right. Well, she just walks into a room and
Hmm.
immediately you sense
Hmm.
that the
Hmm.
playful mindfulness
Hmm.
is embodied in her, and she's just a joy to be around. You're
Can I
yes,
say,
go ahead.
Gabe, that she and I are, well, I'm going to be assisting her. She's teaching a class through Stanford Continuing Studies called Everyday Spontaneity, Improvising Your Life. So that's coming up in 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
What
Yeah.
was that again?
It's called Everyday Spontaneity, Improvising Your Life.
Okay. And where can we get details of that?
That's through Stanford Continuing Studies.
Okay.
That would be, yeah.
All
So
right.
that's a fun way to get introduced to her as well. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'll be sure to post that I'll look for the link and then post it on the feed so that others who can rewatch this can have that. You call your particular practice playful mindfulness. How did
Hmm.
that phrase come about?
Oh boy. Um, I don't remember. Uh, Missy, I'll gladly sign your book if we get to be in person someday. Uh, um, I think it came from when I was training to teach mindfulness. A lot of it was really serious, and I just felt like I wanted a little more juice in there. And I took a course called .B, period, and the letter B, which is a mindfulness
Okay.
training for teenagers. And I was taking it to
Huh.
train to teach it to teenagers. That was created by the Mindfulness School in Great Britain. And their approach to mindfulness was really funny and lighthearted and used analogies that I'd never heard before. And so, when we were trying to teach the mind to stay focused, it wasn't like pay attention, it was play attention. And we
Ooh.
used the analogy of the mind being like a puppy that you need to train. And so just the image of a puppy was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, here's the mind trying to run around, trying to sniff, come back with things you're like, is that a brush or a toilet brush? And is it gross or is it pleasing? And the way the mind does that thing, but that we can train it to stay steady, and that if you follow the principles of positive reinforcement as you would with a dog, with yourself, then you're going to be firm and you're going to repeat instruction, but you're also going to be kind and you're going to give it rewards when it does things well. So it's like, if I want to teach my mind to be steady, then, it's better for me to be kind with myself rather than like, damn it, I suck at mindfulness, I can't concentrate. Like, oh, look, my mind came back. It went away, but it already came back. That's cool. I'm doing great. So taking
I
that course
be,
made
be,
me start to
before
think
you
about
go
what.
on, I just want to share that my very first meditation, the priest who was guiding us, Father Joe Kilong Kilong, used that exact same analogy. If
Wow.
distractions come in,
Hmm.
um, pretend that you're a dog and it's a car
Wow.
passing by. You can run after it a little, but then you can come back.
Uh-huh.
Just let it pass you by. So I'm just
Uh-huh.
floored that the
I love it.
dog analogy is
These
allowed and it's
Jesuits,
there
they got
with
some.
these
They got some
Jesuits.
ideas.
So yes,
They got
go
some
on, go
ideas.
ahead.
Yeah, I love it. So well, just so that course showed me that we can take this mindfulness practice and make it fun. I don't know why I'm so fuzzy all of a sudden, but and make it fun and sort of settles into a different possibility. But the other thing was that I was in the middle of, I was on a sabbatical from teaching. Let me try to get my camera here. Um, I was on the middle of sabbatical year
That's
off
all
from
right.
teaching.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
camera might
I can
fix
still hear
itself.
fine. And
Yeah.
Yeah. So I took a year off, and in that year, I was examining 4 streams. One was growth mindset. So the idea that we can always learn and we can change our minds. And if we have that sense of possibility, then we can learn better. The second was um, contemplative practice, which included mindfulness. And then the third was applied improvisation. And the fourth was positive reinforcement training. So I was exploring these 4 things and what they had to do with effective teaching and learning. And as I explored those themes more and more, the mindfulness and the improvisation just kept rising to the top. It's like, oh, these 2 things really, really go together. And for me, I was more interested in the mindfulness side of it in terms of teaching than the improv side of it. So it's like, well, what kind of mindfulness is it? It's a playful mindfulness. And playful is an easier word for people to understand than improvisation is.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, you're a little bit blurry right now, so we're
I'm
gonna give you
back.
a
I'm
chance.
back.
Okay, there you go. There you go. And yes, you're absolutely right. Improv as a word can be absolutely terrifying for
Hmm.
people,
Hmm.
and can be can prevent people from entering the room or even
Hmm.
opening the door. But
That's right.
playfulness,
That's right.
now that's now that's
We we all know that.
yes, everyone
Hmm.
knows that, and it's a little bit more welcoming. We have a lot of comments in the
I'm loving these
stream.
comments. Yeah, it's really fun to see these. Thank you for posting them.
Yeah, Justin says, "I love the growth mindset concept."
Super powerful.
Um, Joaquin says, "The mind is something to be trained to be both helped and rewarded. It's good to be forgiving to our minds."
Hmm.
Yes, that's
Hmm.
an interesting statement there. Forgiving to our minds.
Hmm.
Growing up Catholic, and
Yes.
growing up Catholic, and being and having the thought patrol of impure thoughts and bad
Hmm.
thoughts and all of that. One of the biggest benefits for me of improv was being able to be more forgiving of myself and just
Hmm.
allowing some thoughts to come and go like a and letting them go like a dog in meditation. How does that statement resonate with you? This forgiving to our minds that Joaquin said.
Yeah. Well, I love that, Joaquin. It's for me, the foundation of mindfulness. One of the phrases that we use in mindfulness is curiosity and kindness. And that it's like if we can be curious and kind with our experience, then that's kind of what mindfulness is, right? So what is it that's happening? And can I be generous to the thing happening and to myself and my reactions to it? And so it's just kind of a starting point. For me, forgiveness is an extension of kindness. I don't have to dismiss what you did. I don't have to miss that it happened or dismiss what I did, a mistake I made. And so in improvisation, we know it's not like we're saying, forget the mistake. Don't, but it's like, don't dwell on it. Don't beat yourself up for it. And so there's improvisers are really refined, at least one side of us as improvisers is refined and saying, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to forgive myself and move on. In improv, there's also a practicality to the forgiveness because if I don't get over it quickly, I'm no longer in the scene. And so that's not necessarily true in real life. Like I could dwell on something in real life and I can still be in this, I could still go to work the next day. I could think about it all night long. But in improv, I don't have time to do that. So we have to be quick with our forgiveness, our self-forgiveness. And so there's kind of a turbocharge there. Um, but really taking it, taking it as a conscious practice is like that spirit of, let me just be light about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
mistakes happen, and here we go. And I will make up for the ones that I made that made a mess. I'll clean the messes up, but I don't need to beat myself up. And please, I don't want you to beat yourself up either.
Yeah, forgiveness for me, I've always thought is that it's important as an improviser, not beating yourself up, because if you don't forgive, then you lose the ability to focus on the other. and you
Mm-hmm.
lose the ability to create space within yourself so
Mm-hmm.
that the other person can be or can make an offer.
That's right. And so we can pick up on the offers that they're making and enjoy them or amplify them or develop them in some way. Mm-hmm.
Right, right. Beating yourself up puts the focus entirely on yourself. Kay
That's right.
Ross. Kay Ross says hi. I remember your
Mm-hmm.
process of
Okay.
deciding on the title of your book, and after much back and forth agonizing, you eventually came back to the phrase you'd used ages earlier.
Mm-hmm. I had
Mhm.
so many brainstorming sessions, so many lists of possible. I literally had posters all over my living room with like, what am I doing? What are my keywords? What are the possibilities? What are the two elements I'm trying to combine? And eventually, it was my mom that helped me. So she said, "Well, what do you want to be known as? What do you want to be? What do you want your brand to be? Like, what do you want people to think of you?" And I was like, "Oh, well, that's clear. I'd like to be the playful mindfulness guy." She's like, "Well, why don't you call your book that?" I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not perfect." And then eventually I went like, "No, but it's got the spirit of what I'm trying to do," because originally it came that my colleague Lisa Rowland and I do, which she's a professional improviser and I'm a
Yeah,
mindfulness teacher.
we know Lisa.
That's
We
right. Okay, so Lisa, so that combination of mindfulness and improv, I was trying to preserve those two in the title somehow. And when I realized that I could let go of the improvisation from the title and put it in the subtitle or a little uh, additional text on the cover, and I was like, okay, that I can let that go. Playful mindfulness is really the spirit of what the book's about.
and we have another buzz phrase for you coming up.
Mm, mm,
Practical forgiveness,
nice,
which
nice.
which comes
Yeah,
from
I like
our
that.
conversation. Practical forgiveness.
Hmm.
Um, Justin has another comment on growth mindset. Growth mindset enables purposive development based on learning styles, but at the same time reiterates that the learning person is enough and always valid. Again, on forgiveness.
Hmm.
Aaron is, we have a
Well,
very
and so there's
active
also
comment session. Yes, go ahead, Ted.
I was just going to say the mindset is also really big on curiosity. So it says that um, you try to learn, right? If you're curious about something, go learn more of it, and try it out and see what you can do with it. So it's less about um, proving yourself to other people and making sure you fit some external metric than it is about improving yourself because you want to. And so yeah, I love that it enables that and blesses that.
And we have more stories from their own experience.
Hmm.
Aaron says, thanks for saying that improv helped me not play mistakes over and over again in my head.
Hmm. Hmm.
Still a work in progress, but it definitely helps. And Missy
Hmm.
said,
Let's say if we can,
improv helped me get over
improv
myself.
helped me get over myself. Well, great. I keep doing improv, Missy. Improv helps me with that every day. And, yeah, these things are practices, right? So mindfulness, improvisation. That's part of why I think of them as great ways to express spirituality because they're practices. They're things that we come back to and we try again, and then we don't get it right, and then we do it again, and then but it's a choice. It's a choice to keep coming back to it and to keep saying, okay, what's next? What can I learn now? Can I go forward? All that.
Right. One of the things that again, here I go again with the Jesuits. One of the if there was one important thing that my old Jesuit teachers asked me to remember, and if you could just reduce all your spirituality to one thing, they said,
Hmm.
practice the consciousness examen. And the consciousness examen is a
Hmm.
practice where at noon and at the end of the day, you review without judgment everything that
Hmm.
happened to you from waking up until noon, and then again from
Hmm.
noon till before you slept. And
Hmm.
just review it, walk through it as almost as if you were a disinterested third party observing.
Hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself after you review, how was God present in your day?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whether, and we're not talking about a big mysterious apparition or a burning bush or,
Right.
Saint Paul on a horse on the road to
Mm-hmm.
wherever he was going, but just in the little things, where was God present? And then give thanks to that. And for me, um, that in a sense is all about mindfulness, except that in mindfulness you try and do it in the present moment, which isn't
Right.
always possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an astonishing thing again, the consciousness examine. And when I did the when years ago in an AIN conference, I did an exploratory session on improvisation and Ignatian spirituality, I would still have some people who attended that session come back to me and say, wow, that single exercise of the consciousness examine helped me most in my improvisation and in my mindfulness.
Wow. Wow. I suppose you could apply it to a show too, right? Just sort of at a break show, just jot down notes, and then at the end of the night, um, and as Kay Ano Nuevo says, it reminds me of gratitude practices too. Like that's go when you said that the one thing you can do um, is there. Meister Eckhart, who was a mystic, a Christian mystic, said if there's one, if
Yes.
the only prayer we ever said was thank you, it would be enough. Um, so it seems like those are somehow related. So to stop and pause and like, okay, what happened? Let me just notice, especially if we're bringing that curiosity and kindness, So then it's like, this happened. Okay, that's a possibility. There's something to learn from that, something to play with there, and what comes next. Then as you said, it's that pause and register. Like, let me choose to notice, and then
Yeah,
see what
choose
happens.
to notice. Another thing, and this is all flooding
Mhm.
back to me right now, one of the first practices I also learned, which was so alien to me as a Filipino, was
Hmm.
Father Joe Kilong Kilong told me that whenever somebody says anything nice about you, thanks you or praises you, compliments you on anything, you are not allowed to deny it or block it
Mhm.
or negate it. And that's very Filipino. Filipinos, whenever you tell them, for example, you enter into a Filipino's house and you tell them you have a nice house, their first response will be, "Oh, it's very dirty." Or
Oh.
if you
Mhm.
come and they feed you, if you come for a meal, um, you're suddenly surprised because they will give you the very best food that they have,
Mhm.
and even hire a caterer if they're able, and then they will say, oh, that's nothing, it was just our leftovers.
Mhm.
um, we're very negating when it comes to praise or anything.
Mhm.
So Father Kilong Kilong told me that if ever anyone says anything nice about you or anything positive, you must breathe in very, very slowly.
Mhm.
Breathe in the praise, breathe in the good works.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then, as you exhale, say very quietly and nod, thank you. And
Hmm.
it's so culturally offensive and so culturally, it's so culturally something we do not do.
Mhm.
Accept good words and accept good compliments. And for me,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
it's tying back into this attitude of gratitude that you've been talking about.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing though, right? Because it's like in that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but in that cultural approach, I mean, I hear a kindness in that of like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to be in any trouble, and like, don't elevate me. I don't need to be, I'm going, I'm doing it for the community. So there's that element of kindness in there, and yet by denying it or deflecting it, it's not honoring the other person. It actually isn't honoring the other person, because if I reject the saying, well, your evaluation's off. If you're telling me I did something well, like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't anything important. I'm telling you that you're somehow wrong. Rather than taking it as like to receive, like, oh, I love that breath in there that the father suggested.
that taking it in.
Yeah, to catch whatever resistance is there, soften it up, and then take it in. Like, okay, yeah, that's very kind of you to say that. That's cool.
And say thank you. So
there's an exercise I sometimes do.
Yes.
Where, oh, go ahead. I imagine you're familiar with the ta-da bow or the circus bow.
Yes.
Where in improv sometimes people do the woohoo, or like, ta-da, I messed up, and sometimes I do that. People bring to mind a mistake they've made, and then go through. I took a risk, I failed, I'm still here, woohoo, and then they do a big bow, and I have the other people clap. So they have to have the experience of being clapped for, and their job is to receive the applause, even though they've brought to mind something where they messed up. And so there are a couple things going on. One is that they're getting applause even though they're recovering from a failure, but they're learning to take it in to honor the applause. And so I say, you might need to take another bow. And so they have to do, and the applause continues. Maybe just one more bow, because I want them to get to honor the audience. So it's a fun way to work that muscle.
I like it. It's not about you and your negative self-talk. It's about honoring the audience.
Mm-hmm. 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 And I'm not taking a bow because I'm so important either. It's not me. It's like, yeah, I'm great. I'm great. No, I'm going to recognize you're appreciating me. I'm going to recognize that. I went to see. I'm a really big fan of Hamilton, the musical Hamilton.
Of course.
And I had seen it a bunch of times in San Francisco, and when I went,
you were at one point I saw in your feed that you had extra tickets.
Many times.
Many times, and I was like, God damn it!
Yeah.
If only I were in the same city as you.
Yeah, I would have been delighted to go with you. Well, I finally got to see it on Broadway. And when I saw it on Broadway, the guy who played Aaron Burr, the lead character, got to the end of the show and was so distant from the audience. The guy who had played in San Francisco was the most present performer I'd ever seen, a guy named Joshua Henry. But this guy on Broadway was so checked out. He came out and they held hands. He looked to his left, he looked to his right, he never looked at the audience. He went up, he went down, and then he left. He never waved at the audience. And I was like, wow, dude, we're standing on our feet cheering. You did a great performance. And he just boop. And I felt kind of a little bit angry almost, or miffed anyway.
Right.
I'm telling you how great you were, and you just totally ignored me. So it's good practice to receive gratitude. I love the one you mentioned.
Wow. Missy says, honor the audience. They are your scene partner too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just for the sake of those, I know most of our audience are improvisers, but just in case there are non-improvisers, do you want to walk them through what the failure bow is, just so that they're up to speed?
Yeah. So this is a tradition that has many different names. I learned it as the circus bow or the ta-da bow. Sometimes people call it the failure bow, but I learned it from Matt Smith, who's an improviser in Seattle, Washington, and it was a way to counteract our tendency when we mess up is usually to do what we call the failure flinch of dang it.
The cringe.
Cringe, close the shoulders, eyes tighten up, fists, and we kind of hide away and close down. And actually, there's research to suggest that makes us less able to handle stressful situations when we close down like that. But that tensing happens in the mind too, as we were talking about earlier. that non-forgiveness, that self-judgment, like, damn it. Mm. And so the circus bow is a direct response to that. And so Matt talks about having three elements. One is that you throw your hands high up in the air. So you counteract that failure flinch by being open.
By opening your body, yeah.
Opening your body. And it's got a high-pitched woohoo or a ta-da. And then what he calls the dumbass grin. So you put them together and woohoo! And you just get this very different feel of like, I messed up. Ah! And it feels good, like, to do this big release. And then it also actually makes you more able to be present, as we were talking about, to recover quickly. And so the one that I do is a variation. Sort of added a few elements. Is I put one hand to the side and say, I took a risk. And then the other one is, I failed or I messed up. And so this is now like an open, honest admission of, yep, something I tried didn't work. And then the next element is to come back to the heart and say, I'm still here. Woohoo! And then to do a big bow, big flourishing bow. And so it's to say, we celebrate this coming back and choosing to return to life and to rise up from the ashes. And so it's kind of a neat thing to do with Holy Week. It's like, you know, things can be really dark and really tough and yet there's this some resilience that can come up and get off the mat and take part again. And I will say, Gabe, I know that some people call it the failure bow. I don't call it the failure more, because we're not celebrating failure. And sometimes I think it gets mixed in that way. It's not like, sweet, I failed. Although, you know, you want to be able to fail, but it's the celebrating the response to it, the government, the self-forgiveness, the courage to say, I did that, and here I'm getting back up. So that's why I like the circus bow or the tada bow. Either that I think gets the names it a little bit more precisely.
Yeah, I do like the nuance of the tada bow, and it's a ritual right there. It reminds me of the sign of the cross. Because you say things as you in the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit, but that tadabao is so powerful. I'd love to review it again. So you said, I took a risk.
I failed. Woohoo! And then a big bow. With, and ideally you've got people applauding for you at the time, but like, yeah, so great.
I took a risk, here I am.
And when I pause,
I failed, here I am. Woohoo!
Yeah,
I will do that.
I'm still here.
I will do that when I come across every church that I come across this entire Holy Week, and see how the parishioners react.
Thank you.
It's a willingness to, when you're talking about the tadabao, and also making the distinction that it's that tadabao has certain nuances that the failure bow that does not. I could hear Paul Z. Jackson in my mind. Because Paul is one of those that always is very adamant about, we do not celebrate failure. We do not do that. So it was just Paul in my head.
Yeah.
saying that over and over again. I feel like Jasmine T says, I feel like culturally Filipinos naturally also laugh at ourselves and don't take ourselves so seriously. I think there's a lot of that, and in fact, my issue is, although we can be forgiving of ourselves, sometimes we don't hold people to account, and that kind of shows in the governments that we have. But that's another conversation right there.
That's episode number 2.
That's episode number 2. And Kay
Hmm.
says it's a beautiful, beautiful way of explaining that practice.
Hmm. Thank you, Kay.
Are there other practices that perhaps we could share in the last 15 minutes that we
Hmm.
have? Practical day-to-day practices, rituals that can
Hmm.
help us be more mindful improvisers.
That's a neat one. I mean, a neat suggestion.
Or if
Um,
you have any in the audience, we'd love to hear of any of your practices related to improvisation or mindfulness that are of practical help, and we'd love to talk about them too.
Dave had the game Clover.
I don't know that. What is that?
Yeah. So I learned the game Clover from Pam Victor. She's an improviser in Western
Yeah,
Massachusetts
yeah,
here in the
I know
States.
Pam.
And so it's a word association game. And the way it works is that you, as a group, you choose a word that's your starting point. Um, and the word, it might be just something ordinary like iron. Okay, so it's like
Yeah.
everybody says the word iron, great. And then one person repeats the word iron, and then the next person says the first word that comes to mind when they hear iron. So if I say iron, what comes to mind for you?
Uh, Laundry.
Great. Okay. So then what the first word that comes to mind for me when I hear laundry is dryer. And then you had to respond to dryer and so on and so forth. We would keep it
Yeah.
going. The trick of the game is that we are trying to get back around to the word iron
Huh.
without trying to get to the iron. So it's this paradoxical, we're holding the intention, but we're not trying, we're not striving. And it's really fun to watch it circle around, and get close, quite get there, and then come back around. And what's really neat is that it's one way to teach you to stay in the moment. Because if you sort of, oh wait, yeah, I see where it's going. I see where it's going. Yeah, I'm holding, and then somebody loses it. You feel they lost the thread. You're like, oh, you realize, oh wait, I was attached to something other than what's true. Or
Right.
maybe I'm responding to a word that I heard 5 words ago instead of the word that I just heard. And so it's like a practice of saying, can I come back to this moment? Just what was right before me? What just happened? And can I respond to that?
And
Hmm.
how it speaks of how attachments can get in the way, even
Hmm.
attachments to things that happened up just a second before or 2 seconds
That's right.
before
That's
can get
right.
in the way of seeing the big picture or being present to the moment and being present
Hmm.
to your
Hmm.
fellow players.
Hmm. Hmm.
We have a similar game which I love, and it's an improvised word at a time joke.
Hmm.
And the way it goes is that we we tell a joke and we do it one word at a time.
Okay.
And you can follow whatever joke conventions
Hmm.
um, there are, whether it's a rabbi walking into a bar or whatever. You can follow
Hmm.
that, and then you with your partner, you with your scene partners, you say it one word at a time.
Hmm.
Um, and and because jokes are generally in the form of a punchline,
Hmm.
after the long setup, the ones on the spot to do the punchline just have to say a punchline no matter how
Hmm.
silly,
Hmm.
crazy, or illogical it is.
Hmm.
And the obligation is for everyone to laugh, no matter how
Oh,
nonsensical
nice. Nice.
it is. And you realize that even in something as playful as a joke, there are conventions, there are things, there's so much pressure that
Hmm.
happens. And the joy of laughter from a punchline in that word at a time joke is often much, much, much louder, much,
Hmm.
much funnier than a really
Hmm.
good joke.
Hmm.
So I find that it does the same purpose.
Well, it's got the commonality, the collegiality. The we created this together, and we just went a little micro journey of discovery, and that has its own joy that's different from the end point of a great punchline. But just like that thing itself has great joy. Kay Ross mentioned the game in the chat that's really helpful for improv, new choice, and she's got a really great exercise for applying new choice to life. You go to her Playground of Possibilities website and information. She's got great stuff there with that game in particular. But like checking out, I just had this negative thought. Let me try something new. Let me see if I can change this belief I've got and come up with something better. What was the other thing I was just thinking of? This is in response to Nigel's question about putting improv into conversations and how it can be better. One of the things that I got, I don't remember where I got it from, but it was part of playing yes and games, is to point out what I like about that is. So, most improvisers know the principle of yes and, but to literally say what you just said, there's something specific in what you just said that I like. And then let me say a little bit about why I like that it sees the other person and it amplifies the other person's thought or idea. And it gives us now a platform to make something else of it. The specificity gives us something else to make of it. And even in conversation, anytime I say that, what I really like about what you just said is, I could see people light up. They're like, oh, cool. And it's maybe this sort of basic thing of we want to be liked. Somebody liked something about something I said, but I don't do it to here's a conversation trick.
Right.
But to try to be genuine about it. And then if I can be genuine, then it sort of creates this warmth and connection, and it feels like the conversations just go so much better because of that.
Yeah. I know that exercise, what I like about your idea. And there was one time when I was sharing it in a corporate workshop that I was doing. And this was with the frontliners of a telecoms, of a cell phone company. And when you're in the front lines of a telecoms company, they were sharing with us that when people are happy with you, you never see them. And the only reason why they would go to a store is if they're already mad and complaining. And this frontliner was telling me, she was the branch manager. She was telling me that one time there was a very, very, very angry lady really shouting at the store and creating quite a scene. And she was trying to have that focus of, I have to like something. I have to like something about how she's shouting. I have to like something about all the angry words she was hurling at me. And what she found was that in the way that the angry customer, the irates, that's what they call them. She noticed that the irate customer had a little bit of a Southern Philippine accent. And the frontliner was from the Southern Philippines.
Okay.
So she code switched. We have many different languages here, over 70 languages. And she shifted to that specific language which she thought the accent approximated. And she said in that language, "Are you also from Cebu?" And that was an island down south. And immediately the complexion changed from anger to complete relief and connection. And she said, "Oh my God, somebody from home. Sit down. I want to talk to you. I want to tell you what's going on." And she gave that as an example of using the what I like about your idea and finding something to like, and focusing on that, and letting it happen, letting it facilitate the conversation.
That's beautiful.
there are requests here, which will be flattering. I need these discussions on a Spotify podcast. Um, what 15 minutes left? Can we have a workshop masterclass by Ted? Absolutely. This is time actually to plug some of the things Ted is busy with. First, tell us about the Monster Baby podcast, Ted.
Well, so Monster Baby podcast has been going on, I think we're on 5 years now. And it's my colleague, Lisa Rowland, who many of you know. And I do what we call a curious romp through the worlds of mindfulness. And we just bat ideas back and forth and choose a theme for the episode and kind of play with it. And sometimes we'll play an improv game. Sometimes we'll do a mindfulness exercise. But we're up to, I think, 91 episodes. We just released one recently. It'll probably be a little while before we release another one, but we've been having great fun, and it's the basis of my book, Playful Mindfulness. The book was based on episodes of the podcast.
Oh, and great segue.
And then yeah, so you well, the link that's up there now, yeah, it's. So I do a Playful Mindfulness course that's kind of, it's a gateway or the sort of welcome class. It's a 6-week course that introduces the basics of mindfulness. And so for folks who've never been exposed to mindfulness, it's a great way to learn about it. For people who have an established practice, it's a fun way to add new elements and new insights. For people who are familiar with improv and have the sense of like, God, this improv is into something deeper, it's like, this is what we can do with it. So that class is starting in a little bit more than a couple of weeks, April 13th, I think. It's a Wednesday, or it's a Wednesday, whatever I think it's the 4th is my birthday. And if you go to playfulmindfulness.info and you click at the link at the top of the page about it. But it starts at 6 p.m. Pacific time, so it should be middle of the day for you all. If people want to join, it'd be delightful to have folks come along. But whatever time it is there for you now, right?
Right. Oh, that's right. That's right, because it's 7 p.m. Over there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, guys, so believe it or not, it's been an hour of such stimulating, engaging, excellent conversation with Ted. Thank you so very much. I think there's enough clamor for another episode, and we can revisit this topic soon. So thank you, Ted, and best of luck, and take care of yourself over the next few weeks. You got your first jab, is that right, of the vaccine a week ago or something?
Yeah, I think that's a Britishism. Yes, I got shot number 1, and I've got shot number 2 is coming up a couple of weeks now. So I'm almost there. But yeah, it's amazing what difference it can make. And I hope you are able to stay safe, and all the folks listening and tuning in, that everybody's staying safe and healthy. And I'm really appreciative of people being here. It's so fun to see these comments and the inspiration. And it's always a pleasure to be with you, Gabe. I love your presence and your compassion and your sense of humor. And let's do it again. And if people want to do a specific class for your group, if you want to put something together, happy to think about it. Would love to support in any way I can.
Yeah, this something that would work for both time zones. We can really talk about that. That would be really, really great. So thank you, everyone. This is the very, very first episode of Eye to Eye. We're going to be doing this monthly or even more often if there's demand for it. Do let me know what your thoughts are, and if you have other topics and other guests that you'd like us to have in the future. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in. I'm Gabe Mercado on behalf of Ted DesMaisons. Thank you so much, and have a great, great day.